What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
These are wild times, and we have to get used to these kind of days where we're going to be reacting and being thrown about in the gusts and winds of our American friends.
The threats are real, but we need to react to facts and not to threats. And the plan of Canada, which Quebec is a part of, is the correct one. If there are tariffs, there will be retaliation.
I still have to be very watchful. He seems to be very serious about reducing or even erasing his trade deficit. So he's serious.
We're thinking in terms of 25% on Mexico and Canada. I think we'll do it February 1st.
Yeah, he thinks he'll do it February 1st, but most people think he won't do it till April 1st. But then again, who knows? James Mennie, Montreal Gazette, is on the line. So, Jim, all those people we just heard little clips of, so that's Christopher Skeet, to which my first reaction was, where's he been? Followed by our finance minister, Eric Girard, and then, of course, Francois Legault, all reacting to Trump. A lot of this, I guess, and I think you alluded to this the other day, right? The idea being, you know what, the news has been so bad for Legault for so long. Here, at least, he's trying to stand up. So this is, I imagine he'll keep wanting to talk about this as long as he can.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's no alert like a red alert for Francois Legault. That said, and everything everyone said in that clip is true. I will add one proviso, though, because you even heard Trump. He's not really super committal. We're looking at February 1st. Well, let me tell you something there, Aaron. Donald Trump, who, as he said yesterday, is God's chosen president, will not be doing anything on February 1st because February 1st is a Saturday, and God's chosen president golfs on Saturday. So don't get all twisted out of shape, folks. Calm down. I looked at all these headlines that he decided. Like he had the speech, which was dumb enough, and then afterwards he's got the rally with his cult members, and he's signing all these executive orders. And I really got the impression that this entire ceremony yesterday was nothing more than mise en scène for Donald Trump to follow through on his promise and sign blanket pardons for the January 6th seditionists. Which is interesting because even the way that story, which is a huge story as far as I'm concerned, was covered in the U.S., the Wall Street Journal thought it was a front-page story. The Washington Post thought it was a front-page story. The New York Times and the L.A. Times, both of which are very Trump-friendly papers, basically buried the story, which is all this to tell our listeners is you've got to be careful. It's a rigged game down in the States right now. You cannot trust what is coming out of the White House or so-called, informed sources around the White House. That's all a bunch of crap. And quite frankly, we're talking about, and I hear Jean Charest talking about, Donald Trump trying perhaps to erase his trade deficit. I would respectfully submit Donald Trump doesn't even have a clue what a trade deficit is. Okay, and I'm sorry, but this is where we are. And I think a lot of what he was doing today was what he did the last time he came in. He did his best to try to erase any trace of the Obama legacy. And now he's trying to erase whatever there is legislatively of the Biden legacy. And apart from that, I think he's got zero clue. And I think more and more you are going to see pushback from within the United States, from various state governments. And I would even go so far as to say that the governments that will really suffer from Canadian tariffs, and those indeed that will suffer from Mexican tariffs, and quite frankly, whether those are blue or red states, I don't think they'll think twice about turning around and going to court and going after Trump for what he is doing. We've already had Mark Carney saying that, and it was so funny because he mentioned this, and one of our listeners actually talking to you mentioned this yesterday as well. What Trump is actually doing is violating a treaty that he signed. What he's doing is completely illegal. This is like saying, I have a contract, I don't want to do that anymore. And as of February 1st, that contract won't apply. And yet this is the treaty that he signed. What is the grievance process? What is the process to have this settled? I don't know. But what's for sure is that whether it is Mexico or Canada or Europe or indeed China, it's becoming clear once again, as if we needed another lesson. Donald Trump's word is worthless, changes from day to day, and the guy is a pathological liar. So you know what? How much time and money and effort do you want to spend negotiating with someone who clearly doesn't know what he's doing and is perpetually engaged in this kind of psychiatric game of whack-a-mole, where he goes from one place to another, completely unconnected, stream of consciousness legislation, stream of consciousness governance. And I've said it before, Aaron, and I will say it again: we're not the only ones who are going to get fed up with this. And if I was Donald Trump, if I'm as smart as Donald Trump thinks he is, I would spend a lot more time these days looking over my shoulder in the White House than I would looking across the northern or southern borders.
Yeah, by the way, it's worth pointing out, so all these executive orders that he signed, some, that are, kind of just, made up, this idea about the Green Initiative, there is no plan, right, that he said is no longer in effect. There are a few of those, but the one that I thought was interesting, when you try to sit back and look at all this, if you're talking about, border and fentanyl, and we just had a reporter from Ottawa talking about this, those issues, those situations are documented. There are real numbers that go with those accusations, and when he's presented with the real numbers, it's hard to say we have a border problem when it's down 80%. It's hard to say you have a fentanyl problem when it's less than 1%. So,
and yet, Aaron, the reality is Donald Trump, when he opens his yap, is not talking to you or me or most of America. He's talking to his base. He's always just talking to his base. He saved his fastball yesterday for his base, for that rally. Because, I guess being sworn in as president of the U.S. is not enough. You have got to hear the cheers from the absolutely brainwashed cultists who like to chant USA over anything that you say. That's where we are. And as I said before, Aaron, this is the only way I want to put it, I'm not entirely convinced that Donald Trump will be serving out the entirety of his term.
And why would you say that, Jim?
Because of the level of competence, and indeed confidence that we're already seeing now. There was a lot of talk during the election campaign, Aaron, that this whole idea that Trump had the built-in following, Trump had the cult following, but the guy they wanted was J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance, people, the perception is Donald Trump is Elon Musk's stooge, and that J.D. Vance is Peter Thiel, another billionaire, tech billionaire, is his stooge. And this is how things are going to go. But above and beyond everything else, Aaron, it's one thing. Back in the day, he was talking about, Obama and this and that, and then COVID came along, and it kind of slowed him down. I think a lot of people who have voted Republican or say they're Republican for the entirety of their lives are about as nervous right now as anybody else at the prospect of another 4 years of Donald Trump.
Interesting. Let me move on and talk about the Stats Can story, the report here, which has some bad news for Quebec. Not about language for a change.
No, it's not about language, but it is bad news down the road, because what they're basically saying is Quebec's population is inevitably shrinking. And it's because we have a higher death rate. Immigration has been curbed. That could be changed over the next decade. But whereas Quebec's population back in 1971 represented 28% of the nation's population, by 2049, not that far away, it'll be less than 20%, 19.8%. Now, stop me if you've heard this one before. Oh my gosh, fewer francophones, le français est en danger. How many more laws, how many more ridiculous regulations can we put to sort of pretend that we're able to staunch this inevitability? But that's what's for real. That's what's happening in Quebec. It's got nothing to do with an immigrant or Anglophone conspiracy. It's got everything to do with the fact that Quebecers, by and large, are not producing enough kids, and immigration, as it always has, is filling the gap. And in Quebec's case, most recently, has been filling the gap incredibly. Although we may be seeing some pushback on that. Once we have a federal election and perhaps a provincial election. But the reality is the only direction right now and for the foreseeable future Quebec's population is taking is down. And my concern is how can I put it, politicians or other cultural experts will seize upon this as a pretext for adopting even more ridiculous language legislation on the grounds that le français est en danger.
Yeah. Or to your point, immigration, regulations, because as you said, It's only immigration that's growing the numbers. If not for that, we'd be looking at a worsening situation in terms of growth.
And of course, the more infuriating part of this is, you could say, well, the trick would be, you keep the immigration coming in, but man, you just francisize the hell out of those people. When they come in, you make sure they aren't. That's the last thing the province is doing. They're cutting resources for French language instruction. So what's the deal? Is the idea to keep things in a broken state so you can complain about it and keep people scared? I don't think that's too paranoid to say, given this government's approach to running the province in the past 6 years.
Well, you're right. It'd be interesting to see how the province reacts to this, if they react at all, because it's serious, right? And it's been this way for a while. What's going to change it? I don't know. Jim, are we back? I brought this up a while ago when we first heard about this. Are we back to sending out checks again for having people, encouraging them to have kids again in Quebec?
I wouldn't put it past them. But mind you, we don't have any money. We're broke.
Well, there is that.
So you could probably, I don't know, would they have any leftover stuff that they've impounded? If a car was impounded, proceeds of crime, stuff like that.
All right.
Don't auction it off. Have a lottery.
Yeah, and send everyone the check to have more kids.
Exactly,
All right. Yeah. James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
The man.